Hi everyone, Anthony Fan Solo here, the internet's busiest music nerd. And it's time for a review of this various artists compilation, Star Wars Headspace. There are few movie franchises out there that are as over-merchandised as the Star Wars franchise. I have seen everything from Star Wars Coffee Mate to bottled water to even apples. Star Wars apples. And of course, there's music too. And considering a new Star Wars film just dropped this year, there's of course no surprise that you can get the soundtrack of this movie on CD if you'd like. But what I did not see coming in terms of Star Wars related music was this. It's a compilation of artists making various shades of contemporary electronic music and electronic dance music inspired by Star Wars. And this isn't just like any old bunch of no-name producers working in a bunch of cheap Darth Vader samples. This is a bunch of well-known producers working in a bunch of cheap Darth Vader samples. On this thing we have Bauer, Flying Lotus, Rick Rubin, Rusty, Shlomo, Bonobo, Breakbot, and even Royksop, and a handful of other producers who wouldn't look too out of place on a major EDM festival lineup. This thing is 15 tracks long, and the first song really does set the tone for the entire project. The song C-3PO's Plight by Cascade, which is about as non-specific as dance music gets, and then it just incorporates all of these gimmicky C-3PO samples into the beat for a Star Wars tie-in. There's some glistening lead melodies and some grand piano chords that kind of kick the track off. I mean, there's really nothing about this song other than the corny Star Wars samples that makes it distinct enough to even describe accurately. And there are other tracks here that overdo it on samples from the movie franchise as well, like GTA's Help Me, which just has this prominent Princess Leia sample almost throughout the entire track. It's got this sort of generic trap banger vibe to it, and the drop on this thing when the big blurty melody that you might usually catch on a song of this style drops in, it's just so painfully weak. There's like no oomph to it at all. Troy Boy comes through the track that has a bit of a trap slash purple sound quality to it. If you've heard Rusty's Glass Swords, you're kind of already familiar with this sound. And on this song, like with some of the previous tracks so far, there are these really incessant Darth Vader breathing samples worked into the track that at this point have just become so annoying and tedious. It seems like pretty much all the artists here are pulling from the same sounds, the same pieces of inspiration without really worrying about what each other are doing. So as a result, there's a lot of recycled ideas here. It's kind of like everybody in class was cheating on the test by reading off the same guy, and that guy got a D. Even though there's a new Star Wars movie that came out this year, you wouldn't even know it because not a single track here alludes to it. However, when Bauer comes on with Cantina Boys, a track that also features Darth Vader breathing samples, this is probably the best track on the project so far, and I'll go as far to say the best track on the project, period. Good job, dude. You showed them. As far as bangers go, this one's legit. And it's so good that I think this could be played out of the context of this compilation entirely. It doesn't overplay the whole Star Wars thing to the point where it just becomes a gimmicky commercial tie-in. It's actually got a great groove to it. I could see the song being played at a festival with little to no objection. The percussion sounds great, the synth leads are great, the bass is thunderous, and it's got kind of this wide open, I don't know, industrial kind of vibe to it. It turns the factory floor into a dance floor. Unfortunately, right after this Bauer track, the quality on this thing takes a nosedive again, specifically on the song R2 Knows by Claude Von Strike, which is essentially these really terrible R2-D2 samples worked into the most generic of acid house beats. And then we are treated to some wonderful lead vocals, the only track on this thing with lead vocals, from Barry Drift. And he sings really awkwardly about the most obvious plot points from the older films. Luke's with a little green man on Dagobah. Han shot first and Gordo never shot his gun. That's literally how the vocals sound. And this track, even though it's 6 minutes, it feels like it's 60 minutes. Leia talks to R2, can they have an Obi-Wan blood? It's shameful that they would try to make money off of this music. I mean, it sounds commercial, but only in the sense that the only place where this music would sound passable, tolerable, is if it was playing in the background of a commercial for some kind of piece of Star Wars swag. Things don't really get much better with Rick Rubin with the song NRG 7. And this track seems like, I don't know, an older electronic dance music song that he might have had sitting on the shelf and then he just worked some Star Wars samples into it. I guess it's not bad, but again, it sort of suffers from the same gimmicky, sloppy formula that so many other songs here do. It doesn't really get much better with Flying Lotus either. His contribution sounds phoned in as well. He gives us a really plain, uninspired Flying Lotus style rhythm, very loose and organic, unquantized like usual, and there's not really anything all that musical about it or melodic about it that is inspiring or interesting. All that he sort of tosses on top of this beat for the most part are just tedious R2-D2 samples, which at this point in the compilation we've heard so many. Bonobo's contribution isn't too bad, although it also kind of just suffers from that same annoyance of the Star Wars samples. The beat is okay. The beat change up in the second half is pretty ambitious. At least it doesn't suffer from the same lack of progression that many other songs here do. The beat Royksop brings to the table, it sounds like they could have produced it with one hand tied behind their back. Shlomo's track is painfully underwhelming, with the exception of the very last few moments where we get kind of a crescendo. Rusty's EWOK Pump, though, is one of the better tracks in the track listing here. It sounds like at least he had fun with the freaking project, instead of doing something drab or overly serious, or just working in a bunch of awful Star Wars samples and just kind of letting those be the most prominent voice or the most prominent piece of sound in the track. He gave us a really colorful banger that's just off the wall, and I guess melodically is inspired by the idea of Ewoks. I mean, in my head, I guess I could imagine Ewoks just totally twerking to this shit. And the closer Breakbot brings to the table features these epic string sections that kick the track off. It's very orchestral, seems like it's heavily inspired by the original Star Wars soundtracks, but then it breaks into a groove, a rhythm that seems very Daft Punk inspired. It's okay. There's not really much to this project beyond that. It's just such an awful clutter of songs that are mostly bad. Songs that would have been terrible even if you sucked all the Star Wars samples that were totally unnecessary out of the formulas of these songs. But adding them in, the tracks become almost worse because the same sounds, the same plot points are rehashed again and again and again. It makes me sort of wonder how much creative power some of the artists had over these tracks. Were they told they needed to work in certain sounds, certain plot points, make certain references that they couldn't reference, like the Phantom Menace? I don't know. I really don't know. There's very little on this thing that I would call salvageable. And even the tracks that I think were good were maybe only relatively good. What I think they were amazing, sort of held within the album track lists of future albums by these respective artists. Like, would this Bauer track just stop me in my tracks if I were listening to it on a Bauer album? Would that Rusty track stop me in my tracks if I was listening to it on a Rusty album? I'm not totally sure. But at least they did provide a little bit of relief from the generally high threshold of pain that Luke hanging out on Dagobah that a lot of these songs bring to the table. I'm feeling a light to decent 2 on Star Wars Headspace. Transition. Have you given this comp a listen? Did you love it? Did you hate it? What would you rate it? You the best? You the best? What should I review next? Hit that like if you like. In your face, Star Wars Headspace. Forever.